welcome back. This is the Uptime Podcast. I'm your co-host, Dan Blewett. Alan, how are you doing today?
Hey, Dan, I'm doing well. Boy, it's been crazy up here in Massachusetts. Earlier today, it wasn't rain, it wasn't snow, it was like snowing snowballs. I've never seen it before. It's like maybe like a quarter-inch wide snowballs. It wasn't hail, but it was light. It was just the weirdest thing. We've having the weirdest weather. I don't know if it's part of this coronavirus thing that's making the atmosphere
You're saying
go crazy.
it's like raining coronavirus, like snow meatballs, or what?
It's like raining meatballs, but little white meatballs. It's kind of what it'll look like. So we're outside. We're starting getting pelted by these snowballs from the sky, and it was the most bizarre thing that I've seen in a long time. I've been in hailstorms. I've been in big hailstorms. I've been in sleet, you name it. But that was the first time I've been in like a snowball storm.
So what were these like more? They seem like you sent me a quick clip of it, but it seemed like they were falling faster. I mean, were they icy? Like, did you catch any in your hand?
No.
Like, what was the consistency here?
They were soft and fluffy, like
Weird.
a little soft fluffy.
So they're just
meatball.
big. They're just big snowflakes then.
Yeah. No,
the
they
size-
didn't look like a
size of-
snowflake. No. You know, a snowflake has those crystalline edges, so it has this definitive shape, right? So it looks like a snowflake. But this had been balled up, so it
Kinda
looked
amorphous.
like yeah. Well, it looked like a snowflake that had kind of melted with other snowflakes, but didn't get hard like hail does when you're in a hailstorm like in Kansas. Those hailstorms can be quarter-inch, half-inch, 1 inch, or larger diameter. These are much smaller and fluffy.
Well, speaking of hail, when you were living in Wichita, did you ever have your car get just like destroyed by hail, just damaged by it?
Well,
It'll
everybody
pepper your car, right? Just covered in like little dents that just like ruin it.
Not little dents, big dents.
Big
They
dents?
had big breaking windshield kind of hailstorms in
Yeah.
Kansas. And when we knew hailstorms were coming, everybody would scramble and get the heck out of work or wherever we were and get the cars inside. I've seen cars nearly destroyed. I mean, it's sort of a badge of honor a little bit, so people would keep the car. Sometimes the guys where I used to work used to keep their beat up trucks like that to show all the storms that have been through. Yeah, it's crazy how big the hailstones can get there because of the way the thunderstorms are huge, and it just recycles the ice up and down. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger in the storm, then eventually falls out of the sky and hits your car. Oh yeah, it's crazy. Well, you don't have that kind of weather in Maryland, did you? You're not like that.
I've
you have
seen hail
hurricanes.
a handful of times in my life. I think more in Maryland than I did in Illinois, my decade in Illinois. But so I've
Really?
seen hail a couple of times, but it's been very few and far between. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I didn't think of all your road travels playing baseball. If you ever come across some, did you play in the Midwest at all? You had to be playing in the Midwest at some point,
Yeah,
right?
I played the majority. Well, I guess not the majority, but I played 3 of my 6 years in the Midwest. Yeah. So, but I don't know that we ever. I mean, hailstorms typically come what time of year? It's like transition time, right? Like May, because it comes down, and then it gets pushed back up, and then it like melts, and then it comes back down, and that's like the cycle of hail, right? Until it's too heavy, and then it breaks through, keeps falling.
It breaks through. Yeah. It kind of gets outside the cyclone that's inside that cloud. Yeah.
Yeah. Although the craziest atmospheric thing I ever witnessed, which you like, obviously this has to happen somewhere, but you know, like in like the Peanuts comics where it's just raining on one person, right? Like the storm cloud just over Charlie Brown. Yeah. I was in a baseball game. I think I was 13 or 14. I was playing left field, and like we knew it was probably going to rain that day, but we were like going. We got like 3 or 4 innings in or something. Yeah. And I turn around, and it's just absolutely pouring, like thunderstorm 20 feet behind me, like a literal sheet wall of rain. And I was just like,
Run.
Whoa. But no, but it was fascinating because from one foot to the next, it just wasn't raining. And it was just like a sheet. But you just never see that. Like you're never at that point, like the exact edge of a thunderstorm. And I was literally like Charlie Brown. I'm like, I could stick my arm in and it's raining, and I could pull my arm out and it's not raining. It's like, it was trippy. It was so weird. And I'd never seen anything like that since. I'd never been on the edge. I mean, it has to have an edge, but you probably think it probably has like a more like feathery, soft edge. Like it's not like direct, like thunderstorming here and then not thunderstorming 1 foot. But that's how it was in that particular instance, and it was like mind blowing. It was so strange.
Well, in the Midwest, that happens quite often, because the storms are bigger, right? They've been
Yeah.
gathering up for hundreds of miles before they get to you. But yeah, I mean, you could feel the cold weather. You can actually feel the cold front coming through. Like the weather is changing right now. It's hot on this side of the sidewalk.
Mhm.
It's cold on that side of the sidewalk. A lot of times, particularly in the summertime, you see that. Yeah. Well, have you ever been in a tornado? You ever
No.
been around a tornado? You ever seen a tornado?
No. My
Really?
my dad grew up in Oklahoma, and he saw like debris flying through the air, but he was never in the middle of a tornado either, even though he spent
You didn't see one off the distance.
25 years there. Yeah. No, I've
Oh, my
never have.
gosh.
No. Which
Oh,
is
wow.
pretty
I've
normal.
seen-
Well, you've seen a bunch?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Just because we grew up in Nebraska, lived in Wichita, Kansas for a number of years, have family down in Oklahoma, so we're back and forth Oklahoma quite a bit. We're right in Tornado Alley, so I've seen a number of tornadoes. I mean, there's been many times where we've had even with my wife and I, we've had to pull off the road to get out of the way of tornado.
And then,
That's a normal thing. Yeah, sirens
Well-
going off, the whole thing.
well, and the thing about tornadoes is, I mean, they have to like basically run you over to, like
Yeah.
you see these houses, like one house is destroyed, the one right next to it's not destroyed. So
Yeah.
you could, I mean, it seems like it's a very narrow path aside from getting picked up and thrown by it. Even then, you have to be pretty close, right? So it almost seems like the odds
Yeah.
are pretty low that you get steamrolled
Oh,
by a tornado, right?
Yeah, well, when I worked at Beach there, if you remember, if you ever watched the Weather Channel, they always show the Andover tornado. I forget when that was, early 90s, I think. And I
Okay.
knew people whose houses got destroyed who were in the middle of that in Andover. They had just, the one engineer in particular, Frank, hey Frank, if you're listening, him and his wife had just built a house in Andover, and it's right next to Wichita, so it's kind of like a suburb of Wichita. And they got caught up in that tornado. So it came across the Air Force Base and headed up their way, and they were in the basement, thank goodness, and it just took the whole top of their house off, gone. The water,
Wow.
it's like a freight train coming. House is gone. You can smell gas. They said all the water lines are busted. There's water spraying everywhere. They climbed out of the basement and start looking for other people, make sure everybody else is okay. But I've known people been in tornadoes like that. That's not uncommon in Kansas.
Yeah,
Not
that's,
uncommon.
That's scary. No, there was one tornado that went through central Illinois when I lived there, and it destroyed a small town. I want to say it was like Washington, Illinois. That doesn't sound completely right, but it completely wiped a small town in Illinois off the map. But it didn't hit our town. But everyone was like, it was like a major tornado warning, major winds, and I was living in a townhouse at the time, so there was no basement, and it was like 70-mile-per-hour winds or something, like crazy.
Whoa.
like
Yeah.
really, really crazy winds. And I was like, well,
Yep.
I don't really have anywhere to go to shelter, so I guess I'm just gonna like wait here until this house either collapses on me or it doesn't. And like that wasn't a great feeling. Like we were all pretty sure we weren't gonna get hit, but we didn't know, and I had no recourse.
Yeah.
So I was
Yeah.
like, well, here we are. So let's see what's
But
gonna happen.
you've been in hurricanes, right? I mean, there's
No, why do you assume I've been in through all these natural disasters?
well, because you live in Maryland. I've been in a
through none of
hurricane in Massachusetts. We had a hurricane come through about 2011, and it dumped a bunch of water. It flooded everything in the area, wiped out anything near the river. Got wiped out. It flooded people's homes, destroyed people's homes here. And we're in western Massachusetts. We're not anywhere close to the water, but it came up
Yeah.
the coastline and banged us. So I've been tornadoes, hurricanes, horrible hailstorms, and you haven't been in any of it.
Yeah, but I feel like that doesn't count as it being in a hurricane. I mean, you weren't like in Miami, like your house.
We
getting
were in the
blown
middle of a
away.
hurricane. Oh no, we had trees down. Yeah, it rained. It was like it wasn't a level 5 when it hit us, right? It's
Yeah,
not
you got like
it's
you got like a tropical depression or something.
I think they actually
You
called
get
it
an
a
you get
hurricane.
an asterisk. You get an asterisk at best. You get
We-
an asterisk.
we were-
for
there
your
was an eye,
hurricane.
there was an eye to that storm. I will tell you, there was an eye to that storm. We were in the eye came by us. We hit the wall. We were in the eye, and we hit the other wall as it went by. So
I don't buy it. There you go.
Well, it is true because I was bailing water. So
Okay.
It definitely happened. Yeah.
All right. Fair enough.
Which brings up the thing that you were bringing up, which is this new typhoon wind turbine thing you were trying to tell me about. Which you got to explain that a little bit.
Well, so I guess on a lot of these islands, like the Philippines being a notable one. So, I'll back up. There's a Japanese startup called Challenergy, so like challenge plus energy, and And they have this Typhoon turbine, which instead of the blades rotating on a, what would it? They're rotating on the transverse axis instead of the frontal plane axis. Frontal plane. That's like anatomical terminology. So, but anyway, this is like a horizontal rotating. That's probably not a good way to describe it. It is for me, but so these Typhoon turbines can withstand like it sounds like sustained 90 mile per hour gusts or winds, and then up to 150 mile per hour gusts. So I guess on a small island like the Philippines, a regular wind turbine is just going to get destroyed if a typhoon comes through with its 100 plus mile per hour winds. Yeah. So this small startup is trying to harness that wind power because that's way faster. I mean, a wind turbine has to get shut down at 55 miles per hour. So, like, hey, we have all this crazy wind, but the regular design won't work. So let's design something that can withstand these typhoons and harness that crazy amount of energy. So it's an interesting concept. They've been around since 2014, and I think they're just now trying to get some of their prototypes out there functioning, which is an interesting concept. I mean, it makes sense. Like, that's an underserved market for sure, and some of these small islands can probably be. I mean, that's probably a noticeable, meaningful amount of energy that they could get from just a couple of those on a small island.
Oh yeah, obviously, being able to handle the worst weather, you have to be able to do that. Wherever wind turbines go, they got to be able to handle the worst weather plus some, so you don't have to fail. But in this particular wind turbine, it's like a vertical wind turbine, and from what I can see, it's basically a rotating cylinder to create Magnus effect, which then creates quasi lift or force, so that the thing spins. So there's like 3 of these rotating cylinders. Is that how?
Yeah, and it looks like it has a fin on one side too. Yeah, like there looks like there's a little fin attached to each cylinder.
So it's like a flap. So it's like a rotating cylinder and like a flap on the backside. Wow. Okay. Wow. Yeah. Well, hey, if they could introduce clean energy to places where the weather is extreme, great. Why not? Right? I mean, I guess it sounds like the word on the street where what the world organizations are saying that the weather's going to get more extreme, then we better be prepared for it. Maybe this is a good idea. Check it out.
we can get some renewable energy from all the volcanoes that'll start cropping up, and we need to be ready to harvest all the asteroids that hit the planet, and just like all the disasters that we're causing from all the greenhouse gases. We could just use them to our advantage. Yeah.
Right. Put them to work. Right.
Yeah, but these are a lot shorter also than the regular wind turbines. I mean, they look like they're only maybe 20, 30 feet high, which makes sense because these islands. Yeah, that's what it looked like.
Okay.
I saw one installed, and it didn't look very tall because I guess the winds are pretty severe, probably at close to ground level anyway.
Sure.
So
that's an interesting technology. I'll have to check it out some more.
Yeah, so Challenergy is the startup behind those, and we'll put a link in the description, the show notes for their Typhoon turbine, which is it's interesting. So the other thing, we have two more big topics. Number one, so the Trump administration, we talked about this earlier, I think in like episode 1, 2, or 3 about some of these tax incentives. So it sounds like the Trump administration is going to find a way to allow some of these solar and wind projects to keep these tax incentives, even if their construction gets behind, because that's the big worry right now, right?
Right. Everybody's trying to get people to work, and whatever the term you hear in the United States a lot is essential, right? So everybody wants to be defined as essential by the state government typically, so they can continue to work and get projects done. But at some point, these projects are getting slowed down, no matter how essential they define themselves at, and a lot of these tax incentives are going to expire. I projected a couple of weeks ago that the Trump administration was just going to look the other way and let people submit those tax rebates. That's going to happen. I don't see any way they're not going to do that, because they've done it for so many other industries right now. That's going to be reality. I think the problem we're having right now is there's so many things in the queue that's hard for the federal government and the state governments to try to keep up and keep pumping out all the things that they got going on.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Crazy. That's crazy. It's just so crazy right now.
Well, and it sounds like things are going to get back to work pretty quick. I don't know. Elon Musk is now suing Alameda County, California, to allow his factory to get back to work. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, and it's interesting timing. Well, it's coincidental timing for me because I listened to his podcast today while I was out wandering around getting some sunlight, and he and Joe Rogan talked for probably about a half hour about the lockdown and all that stuff,
Okay. Yep.
and he's pretty unhappy about it. He's, I think everyone. It's a silly rabbit hole to go down when you start comparing it to like auto accident deaths and like all these other types of deaths because auto accidents are not contagious, right?
Right.
We get that, but he says, and I'm starting to sway to this side, which is that things are probably not as bad as we thought they would be, and that's probably in part because we did a good job social distancing, right? So it worked essentially, but now, as I was having a conversation with my parents today because my sister's having her second child either today or tomorrow.
Oh my gosh!
And
well, great.
Yeah, I'm excited for her. I'm excited for the family to see my little niece. But with that, is like she wants us kind of quarantined so we can come and see them. They're nervous about picking something up from the hospital, so like my parents can't, like they're gonna watch my nephew. But then they have to like kind of scoot out of there right as my sister and brother-in-law get home, so that they don't give my parents anything from the hospital.
Yeah.
That's kind of our like worry at the moment. And so then, but then it's like, all right, my sister wants us quarantined, and we're, just because obviously two new, parents with a second new child, it's a really stressful time. No one's sleeping, all that stuff, and understandable. But then you're like, all right, well, life is starting to get a little bit more back to normal. Like my mom said, she's going to a dentist appointment,
Yep.
in a week or so, and she's like, how do you feel about that? And I'm like, I feel fine about it. I mean, what are the odds that the 3 people you come in contact with getting your teeth cleaned, who are going to have masks on, who are going to be doing a good job with sanitation? Yeah, they're going to be
sterilized.
like, what are the odds that those 3 people have it? Very, very slim. It's still the big high risk, like, big group of people going grocery shopping 3 times a week, that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, and even then, I feel less nervous about it. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
And Musk obviously has that same point of view. He thinks it's overblown at this point, and he just wants to be able to get back to work and put in measures in place and let people choose more for themselves, which I think is somewhat reasonable. I think people have done a good job, but so anyway, I mean, where do you think it's going to go to this point? I mean, is it going to be quick? Is it going to be slow?
Oh, we had some meetings this week with local businesses and just trying to figure out locally what was going on and where we're all headed. I don't know. Like, I'm on our local Chamber of Commerce, which is a very valuable resource because they're working their tails off to get information to everybody. But I think there's 2 pieces of this. The engineering part of me, which is there's a lot of information coming out now about different kinds of diseases and viruses we've had over time that seem to expire on their own. And the thing about that is that we don't know why they've done that. Why have they gone away over time? Why have MERS and SARS and bird flu and all these other things in a similar fashion where they've had pandemics and we've been very concerned about them just seem to fade away? We don't have any data on it. I think that's extremely odd. So in this particular case, we've gone to the other extreme, which is to shut everything down and try to figure out what's happening before everybody gets exposed. And now we have an understanding of what parts of society are particularly vulnerable, and then we're like with your parents and my parents, same thing. Everybody's being particularly careful. And I think that makes sense. So I don't necessarily agree with Elon on screw it, let's just go back to work. I think we got to be smart about it. But I do think things are going to start opening pretty quickly here, at least in the United States, because we have somewhat of a handle on it, and we're getting more and more statistics. Like I said, the engineering in me is sticking out. Show me some data. Let's see data. Let's get some data. And there hasn't been a lot of data, but the data I've seen seems positive. So hopefully we get moving again. And we got to get moving. And your sister's got to have this baby. Like, things happen. Life does not stop, right? She's going to have this baby. Your parents are going to see the baby. All that stuff's going to happen. We just got to do it smart, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And like with my parents, we were talking because they're going to be just down, they're 30 minutes away. So I said, hey, I haven't seen you guys in over 2 months. Like, after the baby's born, do you just want to stop by here? We'll have lunch. And they're like, do you feel like this is a good time? I'm like, we've been very like disciplined and quarantined like everyone has for a while now. It's not going to be more safe in 2 months when everyone's running around and doing normal stuff again. It's like this is as safe as it's going to be at the moment. It seems like
Yes.
I don't have any reservations about having lunch with my parents, even though my dad's a little more elderly than my mom. But it's just it's like now if now is not safe, then it never is safe essentially. And like so it's like let's just do it. Yeah,
be smart, right? Yeah, I agree.
So, I mean, we're not going to go to the movies together. We're not going to go, to a concert. So, should be fine.
Let's just get that out there. Movie theaters are probably dead.
There's a bunch of businesses like that. And I think the events are going to be slow. Obviously, movies, you're right. I think that's going to be a really,
I don't know.
really hurt industry.
If the Rolling Stones have a tour, weren't the Rolling Stones supposed to have a tour this summer? If the Rolling Stones hold a tour, that arena will be full. So they'll have to limit it. But I don't see any way that people are not going to concerts. Do you? I don't see it. I think everybody's going to go to the concerts.
First of all, we need to talk about your pronunciation of the word tour because this is fascinating.
This is America.
Well, you just said tour. And I have to bring this up because when I lived in Illinois for 10 years, I say tournament, which is the East Coast way of saying it, whatever. Everyone out there says tournament, which is a much more easy way to say it. Like tournament flows out of your mouth a lot better than tournament that you kind of have to chew through.
But there's a U in there. All right.
There is. But I said, everyone made fun of me for years saying tournament, where they all say tournament. And I'm like, how do you say the PGA Tour? They say, oh, tour. I'm like, well, that's the root word of tournament. And they're like, okay, fine, Dan. And you just said tur, which is actually, I appreciate that it's consistent with the way that you say like turbine. Like you say...
It's what it's spelled.
Wait, you say no, you say turbine. I say turbine. But you said you were consistent with tur versus anyway.
Yeah.
I think regional dialect is fascinating. It's just it's interesting just the different pronunciation. Like I say I say orange or I say orange instead of orange. My mom says warsh. She's from Baltimore.
Oh,
it's people in Illinois say milk, M-E-L-K instead of milk.
Yeah. Okay, let me ask you a Maryland question because this came up the other day.
Okay.
Havre de Grace. That's a town.
That's actually near where I grew up. Havre de Grace.
Yeah. Havre
de Grace.
Is that the French pronunciation of that town name, or is that the Americanized French version of that town name? Because I don't think
couldn't tell you.
Okay, because the first time it's clearly a French town name, right? It clearly is. Yeah.
It sounds that way. Yeah, it's awkward to look at it and then Havre de Grace.
Well, it's like in Wichita, Kansas, where the Arkansas River runs through the center of Wichita, but the Arkansas River turns into the Arkansas River when it gets into Arkansas.
That's ridiculous. That's nonsensical. Get out of here with that.
Hey, that's welcome to America, right?
Well, the other weird thing about Illinois is there's a ton of little towns. So when I lived there, I lived in central Illinois in Bloomington. And south, there's Charleston, Illinois, Atlanta, Illinois. There's a bunch of other ones. And everyone references these towns, and I'm like, oh, you went to Charleston for the weekend? Like, South Carolina's beautiful. They're like, no, idiot. I went an hour south to this crappy small town. I'm like, oh. And that like kept happening for so many years. I never got used to it. Charleston, Atlanta, like they have all these big city names in very small towns in Illinois. So anyway, I digress. So our last topic today, we want to talk about the Tokyo Skytree. So, Alan, what is the Tokyo Skytree?
So the Tokyo Skytree is this big radio tower.
634 meters high. That thing is intense.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Right? It's so big that it changes the electrical activity in the sky around it. They have instrumented that tower a number of years ago, and there's been a set of researchers that have monitored the tower for lightning strikes. And they get struck by lightning quite often. But the latest paper I saw, which was this past week, pop out, and I haven't read it in depth, so don't go too deep on this on me, but it essentially goes like this. They know how often lightning strikes in the area before they put the tower up. And they know how often lightning strikes in that area once the tower went up. So there's a delta that happened there. And you would say, well, the delta occurs because there's more lightning strikes happening to the tower itself. But that's not the case. It's actually causing more lightning strikes around the tower. It's not to the tower. So the lightning flash density, which in Florida, the lightning flash density is really high. So it's like how many lightning flashes happening in this square mile or this area. So in that area of Tokyo, the lightning flash density is increased because the tower is there, which tells you something weird is going on where the tower itself is actually changing the electrical activity in the sky. Very similar to, I think I showed you that video from the sort of the video photographer in the Midwest where they had the lightning strike occur, and he's at a wind turbine farm, and all of a sudden all these lightning strikes appear on these wind turbines. It's like simultaneous, like one electrical activity, chain reaction to another set of electrical activity. I wonder if that's the case with this tower, where the tower is putting the energy up into the sky and changing the electrical activity and causing the lightning strikes to happen in other places. It's a chaos. Thunderstorms are very chaotic, and the charge in them is not well understood. It would surprise me that the tower is actually changing the way lightning strikes in the area. That is amazing. It's sort of it's confusing and a little bit scary, but it's still weird. Cool, right? Isn't that weird? Like you've got a business like 3 blocks over in a high-rise apartment, and you're getting walloped from lightning strikes because that tower 3 blocks away is there. That's odd. I don't think anybody would necessarily predict that, and that's what the paper was trying to get to. Like, that's data we haven't seen before.
So, what was the primary purpose that they built the Skytree tower for? It's
radio.
It's radio.
Yeah, it's communication tower. Yeah.
But they have like a restaurant up top, and they have some. I mean, it's like a cool like little destination. But why do they need such a big tower just for radio?
Well, because it's line of sight. You got to be looking down and everything. So the higher you go, the more distance you can cover until you basically get to the curvature of the Earth, and even then, you can transmit further. So in most radio towers, like on any radio tower you see, the antennas are way up at the top because they're sort of looking down on you all the time. So as far as you can visually see, like if you were to climb up the tower and look out, as far as you can see, it's kind of how far the radio waves will travel to. So you want to get them up as high as you possibly can. But the problem, obviously, in Japan and Tokyo is earthquakes, right?
Yeah.
So as you build these big, huge towers, you got to deal with the fact that they're going to get shake, rattled, and rolled. And can you keep them up? Can you keep them up and not have things fall down and hit people? Yeah.
So the design is really fascinating. So they designed it off of the pagodas, which are those square, really cool buildings that they built up in the hills. That it's like a traditional building. And within the center of those pagodas, especially when they stack them up, is this flexible column called a shimushira. And so basically the architect, and there's a really interesting YouTube video about this. The architect, showing you into the center column of the Skytree. So this concrete center column is sitting on these rubber discs, number one, so that it has a little bit of like a vibration dampening at the bottom. But then it also has these oil dampening arms. These just like basically like big hydraulic arms. Well, that's what they are. And then so the center column is connected to this outer wall. So if you just imagine a big tube that this column is within, but not actually touching the edges. And so it's connected to that outer tube with these oil dampening arms. So when if there's an earthquake, as the center column moves one way or the other, it'll be dampened by these oil dampers, and then sort of counteract the sway of the entire building one direction or for the other. So it's really interesting technology just to see how they can build that tall and keep it safe from collapsing.
So that whole thing's like built on oil dampers. It's just sitting in fluid, essentially. Is that the thought process there? It's just sitting in fluid, just sitting there. The fluid lets a translation happen between the earth and the building, right? Is that kind of what they're doing?
Yeah, so it's sitting on rubber discs, but then again, the center
fluid
column is within a cylinder, and then these hydraulic arms are connecting the column to the outer cylinder of it.
Wow,
and that's all
cool.
Within the center of the building. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So
I
guess that's the only way they could have, or maybe not the only solution, but that was their solution. And it seems pretty elegant and pretty. And it's cool that it's kind of like tied into their cultural history as well. So
Yeah. No, that's cool.
yeah, for sure. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was we were talking a little bit about batteries. So you said there was maybe an advance on battery, maybe giving us some storage for turbine energy.
Well, there's a paper that came out recently by a Clean Energy Consortium that looked at. No, I think it may have been EPRI. Actually, it may have been no. It was EPRI was a different thing, and we should talk about the EPRI thing on another day because it had to do with blade recycling. But in this particular case, it had to do with batteries, and that the energy storage cost of batteries was approaching that of running a gas turbine. And I needed to dive into it a little bit deeper, but that sounded interesting, that you could actually have mass storage, battery storage capability that was as efficient or inefficient, as the case may be, as running a gas turbine. So if you're storing up energy, excess energy from whatever source, from wind turbines, from solar, and when you don't really need it, and then use it, obviously you store it in batteries, and then when you have peak demand, you're just going to dump those batteries onto the power grid, and then away you go. It was surprising to me that the gas turbine and battery storage were getting close to one another in cost. Boy, if that threshold ever happens, the world will change overnight. That's huge because we've been trying to get to that point forever. That obviously makes wind turbines and solar energy situations much more beneficial.
Well, and so is it a major breakthrough in like the technology of the battery itself? Because you said lithium ion's been kind of stable as like the front runner for a long time.
Yeah, there were two different battery technologies. Lithium was one of them. There was another one in there that I'm not as familiar with, but I think obviously as we build more of these things and we start building a lot of electric vehicles, and Tesla's building these batteries for that go on the wall of your house. It's going to drive the cost down. So maybe the Gigafactory, the Elon Musk Gigafactory is coming into play because as you produce more, it drives the cost down. You got a manufacturing base all set up. It just drives the cost down further. Maybe you can cross that threshold. Maybe we're getting close.
Yeah, it could be there. I mean, that's pretty interesting. Speaking of Tesla, as we wrap up here, he was mentioning on his podcast their new Roadster is going to go 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds. Like, is that even real?
No.
Yeah.
No. You know what does to your insides when you do that? Because have you ever been in a car that's like accelerated at anywhere near those speeds?
No.
It hurt.
No.
You can feel it. Your internal organs are getting shifted around when that's going on. Like, why is my kidney
liver
hurt?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why is that something you look for? Like, why would I want to take my stomach and shove it through my spine? I think let's just. It's okay if I have a 5 seconds 0 to 60. It's totally cool with me.
Well, and 5 seconds is pretty fast too. I mean, that's not slow. Yeah, 1.9
no, it's not.
Is insane.
1.9 is insane, but batteries have infinite torque. Not batteries, but electric motors have infinite torque when you kick them on. So yeah, you can. Electric motor gets up to speed very quickly. Now you have to pound it with a bunch of current to do that. But man alive, that's. Did he guarantee that? Is this one of those Elon Musk things? Like
I don't know. He said on the podcast, whether it's true or not, I don't know. But I don't think he would just blow smoke about it. He said that was the base model, and that the higher models would be faster than that. So.
Well, didn't he? He just had it. Well, I'll put this in perspective. He just had a child, him and his wife, I think, right?
Maybe wife. I don't know. Yeah.
Right, but the child's name was like a bunch of symbols.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
I did. Okay. I rolled my eyes at it. Yeah.
Okay, so the 1.9 kind of falls into the child being named a bunch of symbols. I'm not sure how that all plays out, right? Maybe he's getting overworked. There's a lot of stress. I'm sure that there is right now. He's fighting with Alameda. Who knows?
Yeah, he's tweeting about his stock price being too high. That was not a good move.
Too high? No.
Makes
After
no
they told him not to do that? Yeah.
Yeah, he's probably going to be in trouble with the SEC for that. But, yeah. Well, we're going to wrap up for today. Thanks, Alan, for another great episode. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks,
and
Dan.
For you listening out there, be sure to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, anywhere you listen to podcasts. Check us out on YouTube for full-length episodes on video and clips of the show as well. And we will see you here next week on the Uptime Podcast. Badoop. All right, that one's done.
Okay. I hear cell phone.
My cell phone's nowhere near. What do you hear?
Like like that.
That's not my cell phone. It could be my power adapter sitting on the table.
It wasn't there when we started, and it kind of came on as we got going.
Oh, I didn't move anything. There's nothing. The only thing that's on my table besides my laptop and coffee and just other random stuff that's not electronic is my power adapter was near it. Maybe it was that. Let's turn these off.